working really on updating the financial system that was built over 100 years ago. And our mission is really to create economic freedom and opportunities for everyone.
We have not had anyone from the crypto space for quite a while, so I was very excited about this one. Elke Karskens has had an amazing career in internal communications and B2C marketing, working for some of the world's most disruptive companies. We talk about her time at TomTom, Skype, Facebook, and most recently Coinbase. We discuss at length what makes these companies so special, and we talk about the culture at these organizations, especially Facebook, which had such a profound effect on her career. We also discuss crypto and her view on how Web3 and blockchain is potentially going to change the world of banking. We talk about how she manages her successful career alongside being a mum of 3, and also the importance of believing in yourself to learn and adapt. Elke has moved into industries which have been quite alien to her to start with in very senior roles. So she's had to pick a lot up quite quickly, and that can be quite daunting. It was fascinating to hear her talk about that. This is an inspiring conversation with a lady who has contributed so much to companies who have disrupted legacy industries. This is an amazing conversation. I took so much from it, and I could have spoken to her for so much longer. It's Elke Karskens. Elke, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. How are you in sunny Amsterdam today?
Gareth, thank you so much for having me. No, doing well.
I've been really excited about this one. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin and crypto, as some of the listeners know, and we're really looking forward to chatting through your amazing career. So let's start with this one then, Elke. What does good leadership mean to you?
That's an interesting question, and one that I think throughout my career have done a lot of thinking about. I've had the fortune of working at some amazing companies throughout my career. I've been at TomTom, Skype, Facebook, obviously now at Coinbase. And I've been exposed to some amazing leadership. And I think what all of these incredible leaders have in common is very much the ability of fostering and creating an environment of safety and trust, and really empowering people to thrive. At the most basic human level, like professionally as well as personally, like all that people are looking for is being recognized, valued, and respected. And I think if you translate that to the workplace as well, like creating an environment in which people can thrive and be their absolute best and are not afraid to take risks, calculated risk, obviously. It will create a sense of belonging and longer term, like greater commitment as well. And at a company like Facebook, the leadership was truly outstanding. And I think it definitely informs and has set the example of what other companies perhaps want to start sort of embracing a little bit more, as long as they can, if you think about them standing the test of time. I think an example there is like we had all of these posters around the office that really talked about like fail harder. And what they really did, like they encouraged people to try new things. And we had this culture of celebrating failure, or perhaps better said, more like learnings. And because there was that environment of safety and trust, people felt that they can do new things. They very much believed in people's competence wholesale and overall. Like if you are good at one thing, you're probably good at something else as well. And there was a lot of freedom to be able to try new things. But again, like if you don't instill an environment in which people feel comfortable taking those risks, you're not going to get the best out of people. And more often than not, I think when you give people that freedom to try new things, you see results both on the business side as well as on the personal side. I did a lot of work back in the day for our SaaS business, which was called Workplace. We did a lot of studies. We asked people like, what fundamentally makes you join a company or stay at a company? And beyond the core benefits of obviously like pay, like secondary, primary benefits, like people want to be heard, they want to be valued, they want to have a voice, they want to understand what the leadership stands for that they work for. So I think fundamentally good leadership demonstrates itself in a culture and environment where I guess safety and trust is truly fostered. We're going to see a shift in the companies that will be able to stand the test in time.
Yeah.
Because of how these leaders show up. And especially with millennials and Gen Z, like what is expected and the norm and what truly drives retention looks very different than what I did 30 years ago.
Yeah, the younger generation they obviously don't like this autocratic top-down
Absolutely.
leadership style, quite
Yeah.
clear, and they vote with their feet, don't they? Just look at
Mhm.
attrition rates in companies who manage in that way. We have obviously had Steve Hatch on the podcast,
Yeah.
and I recall him talking a lot about this point, actually, about having this balance between structure and basically, staff having creative autonomy to have their voice heard, to be innovative, to push things forward on their own accord. It comes from that culture in Silicon Valley, I think, doesn't it? And that out of that culture has come some of the most impactful technologies in the world. And, it's definitely about getting that right.
Yeah, and the celebration that good things come from anywhere. And I guess this is a story that has been told multiple times, but like at Facebook, like the social plugins, so the likes of the like button, etc. Like those were projects that were built by people who weren't tasked with building those particular functions and features. These were part of hacks, which we had I assume Meta still does them today, but really giving people the freedom to explore areas that they're interested and are passionate about, and being given that freedom to explore that further. I learned a lot from Facebook, very much on the front of like empowerment, the celebration of failure, and really embracing learnings. And I think we see that at Coinbase as well. Like continuous learning is one of our key values, and that sort of pulls through as a red line in how we operate and the work that people take on.
Yeah, for sure. I want to come back to that, Elke, because I think that's fascinating, and I'd love to break that down a little bit more, and certainly talk about what lessons you took into your role with Coinbase. But first of all, let's rewind the clock back to the beginning.
Let's go back.
Yeah, growing up in the lovely city of Amsterdam. Obviously, you went to Amsterdam University, and you got your first break in internal communications and marketing with the very well-known Dutch company TomTom. So talk us through that period in your life. Why did you go in that direction, internal comms and marketing? What pushed you on that path?
I think that's a good question, and I ask myself that's quite frequently actually as well. I come from a really nice and wholesale family background. My parents both worked in the nonprofit sector. And I guess growing up and in my youth, there wasn't a lot of pressure of being successful in the traditional sense. I had no one pushing me like, you should study law, or you need to study medicine, you should become a doctor. Like, my parents very much raised me with this idea of the importance of the greater good and personal happiness. So I was let completely free in making decisions of what it was that I wanted to explore. From a very early age, I actually started working, I think at the age of 12, 13. I started serving in restaurants. I'm not sure that was even legal at the time. But to me, like having a job and working and making my own money really gave me a sense of freedom. But alongside my studies, I did take it seriously, but I intentionally chose a topic that was very, very broad. Unlike the UK, in the Netherlands, people tend to choose a certain direction because that is what they foresee themselves working in. So I figured that like sort of economics was broad enough to buy me a little bit more time to really figure out what it is that I wanted to do. But as I sort of went through my years, I did always work. So I actually got my first job at TomTom when I was still in university. For those of you that are not that familiar with TomTom, a portable navigation provider.
Yeah, they were revolutionary, weren't they?
Absolutely,
they kind of had they took the sat nav world ahead like 2 or 3 levels, didn't they? Within a short period of time, it was. I remember they were a real big deal back in the day before Google Maps, pre-Google Maps. They were the biggest one, weren't they?
They were, and I joined when they hadn't launched their TomTom Go yet. So the TomTom Go was that standalone device that you could plug in your car, and it basically like told you where to go. Like I joined pre that. You were able back then to pair a wireless GPS receiver with a PDA, which was, I guess, like a personal assistant device back in the day. And then we launched the TomTom Go, and it was truly revolutionized in the way people navigate. And we had a CMO at the time that was really, really big and bold on getting this as far as we could. So I really joined in sort of those heydays.
It must have been a really exciting place to be there, though. You must have learned a lot from that experience, Elke, yeah?
Totally learned a lot. I quickly moved out of customer support and I took on an internal comms role there. They offered for me to go to the UK, where I ended up leading on our trade marketing. And that sounds a bit more glamorous than what it really was. Back then, we relied on retailers, mainstream retailers like Halfords, for example, and Currys, who were selling these devices. So I was responsible for basically schlepping across the UK and educating these sales teams and training them really on what these devices were competent of. So yeah, it was a fantastic learning school, especially as I was still in university as well at the time.
So you obviously left TomTom, and a couple of years later, you ended up in London, I think, didn't you? In Skype.
I did.
Who were another game-changing company that we've kind of forgotten about. Skype video calls, or what we're doing now, they kind of invented the genre, didn't they? So tell us a little bit about your time at Skype, and what did you learn from that experience?
Absolutely. I joined Skype and actually wrote my thesis at Skype about instant messaging. And that, again, like, it feels so weird even saying that now, because messaging is such a part of our everyday life. But yeah, when I joined Skype, like, they were very much one of those companies and brands that had products that, again, like, they fundamentally changed something for humanity in a way. Like, it was a game changer around communication. When you would tell your neighbor that you worked at Skype, everybody would have a story like, oh my God, I have a sister who lives in Australia and I get to see my nieces. It basically brought people much, much closer together. And being part of that journey was absolutely fascinating. When I joined the company, it was relatively big as well, but I want to say I was part of that truly scale-up phase. Part of the teams that very much was able to bring Skype to different type of devices. So I did a lot of work around, back then, connected TVs also weren't a thing, but we had that first generation of connected TVs come to market, and like embedding Skype onto basically any surface that would allow for video calling and really enabling that. In addition to that, this was also in the time when making calls abroad was very, very expensive. You would, if you had family members or friends living overseas, you would likely call them once a week. You would not be spending an enormous amount of money, and be very thoughtful about like who you would be speaking to, again, because of the cost associated with it. And Skype removed all of that. So we also started introducing features around low-cost calling. So we really solved a lot of problems, not just like bringing people close together because of the video calling functionality and feature, but also by offering low-cost calling solutions to people. Being part of that was incredibly fascinating. Learned a lot. I think this is another company where there was a very strong culture of, again, like trust and safety. People were empowered to build, to think outside of the box, to run with big ideas. There were more opportunities and ideas that the business could really service at the time. I learned a lot there as well. It was also for the first time I was really thrown into the deep end. When you work in a non-technical role within a technology company, it can be quite daunting at times. And the sense of imposter syndrome can be very real. The jargon that is being used and the complexity of the technology can be quite overwhelming, to say the least. And I remember vividly at Skype, like being asked to lead on the go-to-market for a new set of SDKs. And I remember like Googling, like, what is an SDK? Like, as I was having some of the meetings with the product teams, like fundamentally trying to understand how APIs worked, etc. That was like an incredible experience in the sense of like learning that understanding you can learn anything as long as you put your mind to it, and it's okay to ask questions and not be familiar with everything, because I add value and have an understanding of certain parts of the business that, for example, an engineer or a product manager doesn't have. And in order for a business to run successful, it's like a village, right? You can't only have bakers or butchers, right? You need all of these functions to come together and able to move forward. So as long as people are smart and competent, they can do most things. By
2019, right, 4 billion people had a Skype address. 4 billion. That's half the human population of the planet. That's how that's how omnipresent Skype was. That's incredible, isn't it? That is incredible. I mean, it was people who signed up for Skype accounts, obviously, and there may be some double subscribe. We made a little bit of crossover, but ultimately, 4 billion is astonishing. It must have been a big decision for you to leave such an impactful organization like that.
But yeah, it was a big decision. It was a big decision to move. Obviously, consulted the mentors I had back then. Is this the right thing? Is it not? And I accept it, and it's the best decision that I ever made. My time at Facebook has been truly defining for me at the most personal level, but obviously also professionally. So it was a big decision back then, but yeah, the right one, especially in hindsight.
Well, you ended up staying there for 12 and a half years, so obviously it was the right decision. But
it was the right decision, yeah.
So looking back now then, obviously you've moved on since, but you were the bulk of your career, I suppose, was at Facebook so far. Well, looking back on your career so far, what were the big milestones then? Obviously, you talked about joining Facebook and obviously a bit of time at TomTom and Skype. But what there must have been moments in your career which really impacted the direction and journey and progression you've achieved.
I think the thing with milestones is very often in the moment, milestones, you feel like you're achieving a milestone when you either deliver a big project or your team is very successful in a certain campaign or you are being given a bigger scope. But I think when you look back and you reflect on what truly were milestones and sort of career defining moments, I think first and foremost for me is obviously having been hired and joining these companies that ended up being stepping stones to the next phase. But I think a real milestone for me was when I was given a much, much larger scope than I had at the time. So I joined Facebook in a marketing functions. I looked after platform marketing, very much bringing the developer ecosystem onto the platform at scale. We had partnership functions as well. And I ended up moving to California. I remained within marketing roles, a mix of product marketing, influencer marketing, and not in the sense of the Kim Kardashians of this world, but people that are meaningful within the tech ecosystem and community and ensuring that their perception of us was a certain way. A lot of product marketing as well. And there was a really clear moment where I was leading a relatively large team back then as well, a team of 20 or 30 people, of program managers, marketing managers, people around the world, etc. And one of my managers left. And the CMO at the time had enough confidence in me or saw enough potential in me to give me a much, much larger scope and basically asked me to lead international marketing across our software brands.
So you went from regional to international essentially then, yeah?
And also my responsibility started spanning across brand marketing as well, which it was something I had never really done before. And this was also around the time that Cambridge Analytica happened. And
sure.
Yeah, so we can definitely go back to that old memory as well. But really being trusted with such a bigger responsibility was a real, milestone, because all of a sudden I had to engage with leaders at a different altitude, but being given that trust and that responsibility, but also the right level of guidance to get me to the point where I end up really thriving in that role was definitely a milestone and career defining.
So can I dig into this time then? Because it was quite an impactful period for you personally and for Facebook around the Cambridge Analytica stuff. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
Now, Facebook come in for a lot of criticism around that time because quite literally on your platform, people's opinions would be informed and it was swinging elections, Brexit, the election of Donald Trump, etc., etc. How did that take its toll on you personally? Did you come in for a lot of scrutiny for that period? Or was it sort of something which was you ignored and you just got on with your job? Well, what was that? Can you talk us through that period for yourself personally and for Facebook?
Yeah, I think that that was obviously a true pivotal moment for the company, and also one that we sort of moved from being a brand and a suite of products, because by then we had already acquired Instagram as well, and that were deeply, deeply loved by people, to a set of products and brands that there was a lot of questions around that from friends and family, are you sure working at Facebook is the right thing? Everything that's happening, do you want to be part of that? And it fundamentally also changed the job that had to be done for us in the business. We sort of moved from the disco years where it was just growth, to really being in a situation where we had to manage some of the most challenging reputational issues that we'd never really encountered before. And I think also at the most personal level, we always talked about we make money in order to build products instead of making products to make money. And there is at Facebook, I don't know, again, I'm not there anymore, but there was a big, big sense of optimism. We fundamentally believed in what it is that we were trying to do. And that is what, I guess, caught us off guard as well, that there were bad actors that had taken advantage of something that we truly believed to be doing good for the world instead of bad. So that was a really, really hard pivot for the business, but I think personally as well. I, at that time, ended up also being tasked with trying to address some of these reputational challenges for the business, especially in the US.
Sure. No, absolutely. I can imagine it was probably something you learned a lot from as well. Let's talk about Coinbase. Where did that opportunity come from? Okay. And where did you take your career towards cryptocurrency? What started that?
where did it come from? I think it's a good question. I think the red line throughout my career has always been being part of companies that are building truly groundbreaking technologies.
Yeah.
And I've always
There's
been
a bit of a pattern
emerging
here, isn't there?
There's definitely a pattern emerging. It is what excites me. It is sort of the unknown, the challenges, the potential of it as well. Like we talked about it, like TomTom was fundamentally to change the way in how people got around, Skype around communication, Facebook brought the world bigger, like closer together. And after having been at Facebook for about 11 years, I had my third kid. So I went back to work with my first 2 kids after 3 months. But with my third kid, I decided to take a little bit more time. And that was the first time ever in my career that I had a bit more distance from my job and Facebook. Facebook was all encompassing. Like I bleed blue to this day still. And it's very, very hard to sort of figure out what the right next thing is when you are in such an environment that is giving you so much. So this was really the first time that I had a little bit more distance and was able to figure out what I wanted to do next. You start asking yourself the questions. You've been here for 10 or 11 years back then. Like, how long am I going to stay here? Is this still the right environment for me? The company by then had gotten much, much, much larger than obviously when I initially started, and we were 70 people based in the UK. And because I had that space, I started to do just a little bit more research and learning. And I think that's when I started seeing a trend of people going into the Web3 space. And that was, again, like that same feeling that I described earlier when I worked at Skype. A very daunting space. Like the more you start reading about blockchain technology, the less you understand. And I remember
of course.
Speaking to a friend of mine who actually brought me into the world of doing some angel investing, who is very much a trailblazer when it comes to changing the game for women and female empowerment in general. And she connected me to this group of women in blockchain. That's sort of like our small group. And it was a super safe and trusted environment where we brought in people that were experts within this space to just explain the bare basics to us. What is a protocol? How does a blockchain work? What is crypto? What does it matter? And it was being in an environment like where we were all collectively sort of figuring out the same thing. My interest got triggered more and more and more. And as I started learning more about crypto and the real world problems that it could potentially solve, I unconsciously, I think, made a decision that I wanted to pursue a career within this space. And then when it turned out that one of my old leads, our current CMO, Kate Rao, joined Coinbase, that was like, okay, I think this is the company where I want to go. Like when they are hiring people like her, they are very, very serious about what it is that they're trying to achieve. So started doing a lot of reading about the mission, obviously the leadership team. That's how I ended up eventually in Coinbase. Yeah.
Well, I always said, obviously I pay a lot of attention to this space myself. And when people say, why are you so bullish on the cryptocurrency space and specifically Bitcoin, is because one of the main reasons to be bullish is the amount of talent that's going into the space. I mean, top-notch graduates from MIT and Stanford used to join JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. They're actually joining startups in Brooklyn now to work on building this new banking system, which aligns with the values of the next generation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's just one example, but there's loads of other reasons as well. But I think that was one that really stood out for me as a compelling reason to be bullish. What other reasons are there, Elke, to be optimistic about further adoption of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to impact other areas of our lives?
No, I think that's I think a very interesting question. Like I think maybe we sort of like need to go back sort of first and foremost what it is that like a company like Coinbase is trying to do. Like I think fundamentally we're trying to we're trying to work on
what
updating.
Problem are you trying to solve?
We're working really on updating the financial system that was built over 100 years ago, and our mission is really to create economic freedom and opportunities for everyone. And when you think about traditional finance, which is very much a sort of the system that governs all of the financial services in which a user's fund is being held by a centralized institution like a bank. In this space, every single transaction passes through a really long chain of institutional intermediaries, and users are paying the small fees within this process. Because each of these entities, they receive a payment as part of their contribution to this transaction. And I think we've all experienced that, right? I was, even a couple of days ago, I was trying to wire some money from the US back to the UK, and You're being slammed with very, very high transaction fees for international wire transfer. You don't have access to the money in a timely manner. And that is for people, obviously, like myself, being in such a fortunate position that we even have access to traditional finance. There are billions of people around the world that are debanked, that don't have access to the most basic financial instruments that gives them the financial opportunities to ultimately grow. And sort of this lack of inclusion in centralized finance is problematic. Because it does make those tools around like saving, insurance, payments, credit, it really makes it inaccessible for the people that need it most. And again, at the most fundamental level, like that is what it is that we're trying to solve. Which actually then brings me perhaps to like the things that I'm like excited about and like what the future of the future use cases of crypto really are. And if we talk about traditional finance, TradFi in one sense, it very much is DeFi, so decentralized finance, which is that umbrella term that is used for financial services on the blockchain, primarily Ethereum. And with DeFi, people can do the same things that they can in traditional finance. They can earn interest, they can borrow land, they can buy insurance, they can trade derivatives, assets, etc. And it takes very much that basic premise of Bitcoin, digital money, and it expands on it, and it creates a digital alternative to Wall Street. And by doing so, a sense of inclusion for people that, again, don't have access to traditional finance. Like inherently, DeFi it's open. You don't need to apply for anything to open an account. You're being granted access by creating a wallet. It's synonymous. Like you don't need to provide your name, your address, your email address, or in most instances, even more personal information. It's very flexible. You can move assets anywhere at any time without asking permission from a third party involved. And it's very transparent. Like you can see the full set of transactions. So I think DeFi is definitely an area that I'm excited about seeing grow and scale even further. But crypto does have a long road ahead of it. It's like I think if we look even further ahead, like 5 to 10 years, ultimately regulation is going to be absolutely crucial within this space because consumer protection at the end, especially with everything that's happened, like matters most. And seeing crypto embedded in more mainstream everyday use cases is ultimately going to make it more normal for people to engage. Like there are obviously already thousands of companies out there where you can use crypto to buy certain things, but imagine that becomes much more of a standard and it normalizes crypto for the mainstream because DeFi still, again, is perhaps for like that earlier majority today.
Wow, brilliant. Elke, I really didn't want to stop you there because that was a fantastic case for cryptocurrency and decentralized finance, DeFi, which was brilliant. But let me just jump back into this sort of critical, cynical view then. Okay, so obviously FTX collapsed. There's a lot of fraud going on, it appears, allegedly, and it appears from on the facade of it, although I believe a lot of the charges have been dropped. But it left a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths, okay? And it give, as I think you've said in the past, give the industry a bit of a black eye. Can you just talk us through how that was perceived in Coinbase and how that has affected the business and in terms of your increasing adoption of cryptocurrencies and all these amazing things you just explained brilliantly?
We talked about it really briefly as well, like everything that happened in fall 2022, especially FTX falling down, made it really clear how important regulation is. And at Coinbase, we've always been pro-regulation. We've been working with regulators and politicians around the world. And we're advocating for clarity around regulation as well. We applaud the leading actions of governments and policymakers in Europe and the UK and other jurisdictions that are taking some really strong and positive stance on that. Take the UK, for example. Prime Minister Sunak has previously stated his desire to make London an international crypto hub. In Europe, we obviously see groundbreaking regulation coming in the form of MiCA. Germany has become a center of crypto, and the blockchain activity in Berlin is very much evolving into becoming a global hub for the entire European region. I would also say outside of the UK and Europe specifically, like the Central Bank of Brazil has announced plans to leverage the PIX payment system to encourage banks to hold digital assets. The UAE is another great example. Like in Dubai is seeking to become a global hub for crypto and blockchain. Australia is in the midst of consultation processes on token mapping and is expected to further consult on licensing and custody regimes for crypto later in the year. So we're seeing a lot of very positive traction in certain jurisdictions around regulation, because that is fundamentally what has, it's been made clear in the last 8 months or so, that consumer protection needs to be at the heart of this industry in order for it to be successful long term.
Yeah, sure. No, brilliant answer. I think it feels kind of inevitable that this is coming, Elke, doesn't it? I mean, it's just a case of when, not if.
Yeah.
And you didn't even mention El Salvador, who've made Bitcoin legal tender, which I know is slightly different to what you're talking about, but I thought that was quite exciting.
Absolutely leading, yeah.
But yeah, but there's lots of global macro signals pointing towards adoption just increasing in momentum. I think it is where we're going with it. What exciting stuff have you guys got coming up? How do you see Coinbase evolving?
There's obviously there's a lot that we're working on. I think the first thing that we're very excited about is the clarity of regulation coming in, because once that exists, like it really gives us that framework as a very innovative company to be able to build the product in the safest way with consumer protection sort of at its front. So once we see that clarity around regulation, it will very much give us that path forward into what it is that we can and can't be building and how we're building it. So I think sort of at we're looking furthest away, like we're excited about that clarity coming in. And we are committed and have been committed around building like the easiest and safest platform for people to not only get started with, but also for those that are perhaps a little bit more advanced within crypto and having the tools available to them. So if you think about if you look at our advanced trading solutions right now, it's very, very, very sophisticated. And we will continue to build products both for a beginner audience as well as a more advanced audience. I think also more on the developer side, we've recently announced Base, which is a layer 2 platform. So very excited to see what the developer ecosystem is going to be building on top of Base. And again, that is very much going to be that bridge to Web3, hopefully for a much greater audience. And obviously like the evolution of additional use cases, things that we're not seeing today, seeing broader adoption in the ecosystem overall.
Just out of curiosity, Elke, in terms of UK adoption and, people engaging, purchasing crypto digital assets, are you seeing encouraging signs in terms of retail adoption? Is it going in the right direction still, or is it plateaued, or how is the sort of macro picture looking for the UK specifically? For the UK specifically,
yeah. So the UK is our second largest market. It is also the largest international.
Really, globally.
Yeah.
Second, right? I'm surprised by that.
It's our second. It is our largest international office as well. And it's our fastest growing market too. We still see a lot of enthusiasm and excitement around crypto. Recent studies have really shown that there is still the intent of people to engage and participate within the crypto ecosystem. People still have the intent to buy, sell, or trade crypto within the next 12 months. But what people are saying is that they do want to see regulation come in. And they want to ensure that consumer protection is at the heart of what is happening. But I guess all with all, like things are still going strong in the UK for Coinbase.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. I got to ask you about this, Elke. You've got 3 children. You're a bit of a superwoman. You're the UK country director of probably the biggest crypto exchange, certainly in the UK, one of the biggest in the world. I think you're probably one of the main ones in the world, certainly. How do you do it? How do you stay organized? How do you stay on top of things, with so much on your plate? How do you achieve balance in your life with so many things, so many responsibilities?
Yeah, I think it's about accepting a lot of help. So we didn't really cover that, but I've got 3 small children, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and a partner that also works full time. And in order to achieve balance, it all comes down to really prioritizing the things that matter most. And when I think about, obviously, like my professional part of my life, it's very important to me, but it isn't the only thing, right? I want to be as successful as a mother as I want to be as a corporate professional. So achieving that balance isn't always easy. I find myself in multiple calls. Even yesterday when I had a one-on-one with my CMO, my 2-year-old comes in screaming naked. It was my BBC moment. And I think first and foremost, accepting the fact that like you are both, and I am a mother as well, when I work, and vice versa as well. And sometimes one thing takes a priority over another is a good starting point. It also means I can't always be good at everything, if that makes sense. There are times when I have to miss out on a certain call or a certain update because my kids take priority, and vice versa. I can't always be the parent that picks the kids up or that attends every single celebration with my children. But I'm very intentional about the decisions that I make. On the most practical level, like, I ensure I have a lot of help, and I'm being very unapologetic about that. I try to really prioritize the things that I deem to give me the most quality in life. So I outsource a lot, and I'm in a fortunate position where I can do that. So I have a lot of help around the house, as well as obviously with the kids, but also having a very supportive partner. Like, everything is truly 50-50. In a lot of situations, the mother and or the woman tends to still carry the majority of the workload. But that is definitely not the case in my situation. I have a partner that is as much in all the parents' apps as I am. We have very clear lines of responsibility and divide in that matter. So I'm not sure I'm doing it all good. Sometimes I feel I do a half-baked job at everything, but I'm doing my best. And I'm trying to set the right example for my kids as well by having a career.
Absolutely, and I think you're setting an unbelievable example. And I think it sounds like exciting times for Coinbase and the industry too. So I'm sure it'll be another disruptive company you've been involved with. So I really want to ask you, you've been involved in TomTom, Skype, Facebook, now Coinbase, just outrageously disruptive, pioneering companies. Outside of the crypto space, obviously, because we've already spoken about that, what tech innovation are you most excited about in the world right now that you've sort of seen in the last couple of years?
Oh no, Gareth, this is going to be a very cliche answer, but it has to be AI. Which I am sure
I knew you were going to say that. How could you not say that?
How could you not say it? It is. It's and it's so weird how that has become a cliche answer, but it is the truth. Like, I think when you see,
because if I'd asked you 12 months ago, you probably wouldn't have said it, let alone said it was a cliche. It's crazy how 100%. Quick that moves, isn't it?
That's how quick things move. But like, when you see the mainstream adoption of artificial intelligence, which has been around for so long, it is out of control. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
We must all experience this. But like, even my 70-year-old dad say, Elke, have you heard of this thing called ChatGPT? Yeah. It is. I just ask it everything. I'm like, I am very well versed with it. But yeah, it is truly fascinating to see, but experience and play around with it as well. And
do you remember where you were? Do you remember where you were when you first saw ChatGPT? Because everyone I ask seems to remember where they were, what they were doing when they very first saw it. Because it was like one of those moments, wasn't it? It's like, wow, this is unbelievable. Was that the case with you?
More or less. I remember a friend of mine telling me about it, and I remember the date exactly. It was December 5th, 2000. Was it? Yeah, it must have been 22.
It was 22,
exactly.
Definitely,
not that long ago.
Oh, you were quite early then. I saw it Christmas time, so yeah, you were a little bit before me. Yeah, but you were early. It come out, the 3.5 came out at the end of November, so you must have been quite quick.
I remember a friend of mine saying, like, there's this AI bot, and it is truly incredible. And I remember, like, this guy always gives me a lot of tips and insights, etc. I'm like, sure. And then playing around with it for the first time myself, I was absolutely mind blown. And I think, like everybody else, my initial instructions were all around, like, write me a song about 3 children in the Netherlands in the theme of Dolly Parton, and it would just spit it out in seconds. So I guess like yourself over Christmas, just playing around with it a lot, showing it to people.
Yeah.
It was truly fascinating. And I mean, I cannot wait to see what's going to come with this, right? Like, what all of the use cases are going to be around AI. You can develop a marketing plan in a matter of hours with accompanying blog posts, social content. You can have all of your creatives develop within seconds and minutes as well. It is fascinating. So cliche answer, that wouldn't have been a cliche 9 months ago, but yes.
No, I don't think it is a cliche.
It is very common, it is. But it is definitely something that I'm excited about and seek above.
To be honest with you, Elke, I'm quite shocked by how many people still don't use this on a daily basis, this technology. I mean, Bard, ChatGPT, other ones, plugins, Chrome plugins are game changers. Mm-hmm. It's all sort of, the engine is always ChatGPT or a similar large language model, but nonetheless, This stuff is going to be, if it's this good now, and we are essentially, 8-9 months in, can you imagine how good it's going to be in 5 years? Can you imagine how good this technology is going to be, in the late 2020s? It's going to be ridiculous, isn't it?
And it's going to be scary as well.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be very impactful. So in Coinbase, are you already utilizing large language models on AI technology to improve productivity and things like that in Coinbase? Or is it just something you're in a planning phase about, which I think is what the case for most companies?
Yeah, we're not using that today yet. On a personal level, though, I do use ChatGPT quite a lot. Like just playing around with it myself is fascinating, and especially like as a marketer, just understanding what it is that you can get from the technology. I do some advising and mentoring, etc., on the side. So being able to help people evolve through some of the problems that they're working through by leveraging AI is fascinating. But yeah, internally we're not yet using that from a productivity improvement perspective.
Do you know what? I had just in terms of personal stuff, I had a parking ticket the other day, which I thought was unfair. So I explained the whole situation to my friend at ChatGPT 3.5, wrote me a sterling letter, appeal letter, and I got my money back. So I was definitely, for stuff like that, it is brilliant.
It is brilliant indeed.
I really want to ask you this question, Elke. You've had an incredible career. You've still got a long way to go, obviously. But looking back now, if you were to have a conversation with your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give to that person?
I'd give myself a lot of advice. I think there's two things that I feel I wasted a lot of energy on. And if I'd seen the picture clearer, like I would have benefited from that. Like I think the first is like the disease to please, like the constant seeking of approval and avoiding conflict. It can really, really hinder progress. And really early on learning how to set boundaries and inserting yourself can be very, very empowering. And realizing that perhaps a little bit too late, but I do now, is that, letting that go. And I think the other is around reminiscence. The amount of time I've spent replaying certain meetings and conversations and things that were said and weren't said in my head and how I could have changed it. What happened, let it be in the past, look forward, what did I take from it, and move on with things is something that I've also really been able to train myself with. Like we can't all be perfect. The only thing you can do is your best. Make sure you're prepared for things properly and then move onwards from it. And that reminiscence is also, something I go. I think the final thing is, things take time. I'm very ambitious and I've always want the next thing, and I'm always excited about the next thing. Yeah. And looking up to people, seeing what people are doing, want to be involved in it. It's like building a career and being successful takes time, and just accepting that, doing a good job, getting work done properly, claiming though the fact that you've done the work and making sure people are aware that you did the work is obviously really important, but it just takes a little bit of time to get from A to B. So perhaps don't be as impatient would be another piece of advice I would have given to my 21-year-old self.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, all good things come to those who wait, don't they? No, that's brilliant advice. I think that's something that I'm sure people will take a lot from. What sort of book, or it has to, maybe you could just say an anecdote of a story if you're not much of a reader. What piece of content have you been inspired by over the last couple of years? I
don't read as much as I used to because I've got 3 small kids and a big job. So there's not a lot of time. Actually, this might be less of a cliche answer, but I think that what I'm really enjoying right now is these autobiography stories for kids that I read with my daughter every night, Little People, Big Dreams, which are stories about celebrating like the trailblazers in history, as well as, I guess, the present. And I don't know, I find there's something, perhaps maybe I wasn't exposed to a lot of that in my own youth and sort of upbringing, but really experiencing I guess maybe exposing my kids and especially my daughter to some of these incredible things individuals and women especially have done in history, and rereading those stories through the eyes of kids and being told in such simplistic ways, I find really promising. And I'm really excited for this whole next generation that hopefully carry a little bit less of the baggage that we had growing up, and the stigmas in which we were expected to function, and the biases that we were given through our upbringing. And I don't know, like reading those stories with my kids, I feel deeply inspired by some of the things that happened in the past, and that some amazing individuals have done. Like take a Rosa Parks, for example. Like, wow, talking about trailblazing
sure.
and pushing through. So I don't know, like reading those things and maybe instilling some of these, like that level of inspiration that you can with my kids. And because my daughter's the oldest one, which is why sort of she's the guinea pig of everything that we do here. Yeah, it's something that I'm really inspired by. Like hopefully this generation will enter adulthood with a big sense of equality and...
Well, that is fantastic. Little People, Big Dreams. Is that a series of books or something? Is it children's books?
Series of books. You have them for children's books, yeah. But you also have the pack, so highly recommend that. And I do not get any commission for that, so.
That is brilliant. Well, we're going to put that in the show notes. I'm certainly going to check that out. I'm looking for new content to read to my daughters as well, so that's brilliant timing. What a great way to end, Elke. What a great conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. Wish you massive good luck in your future endeavors at Coinbase. And thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. Where can people find you, reach out to you? Where are you at? Where can they keep tabs on what's going on with yourself and at Coinbase?
Yeah, no, Gareth. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed meeting you in the conversation. I think LinkedIn is probably the best place. Elke Karskens. Just pop that in the search bar where you can find me. And otherwise on Instagram, obviously, as well, at Elke Karskens. So
brilliant. Thank you so much. Wow, that was brilliant. I loved chatting to Elke. Could have gone on for so much longer. Very inspiring how she manages to excel in such high pressure, pivotal roles in such disruptive, forward-thinking organizations. So much stands out. We covered a lot of ground, but her brilliantly compelling explanation of the need for decentralized finance, or DeFi, I thought really stood out. I think the disruption of the banking industry is picking up. It seems to be it's difficult to see how this is not going to go from strength to strength when clearly the banking industry appears to benefit the few, not the many, and there's so many unbanked people globally. This kind of solves that problem. It was great to hear her case on the response of the FTX collapse, which is another global exchange that collapsed last year and gave the industry a black eye, as Elke said, and how this has focused companies like Coinbase to increase their efforts on the compliance and regulatory side, which I think is the key to mainstream retail adoption. I thought that was very impactful and very profound. Watch this space. I think Elke is going to be a superstar of this industry. Yeah, it was a pleasure to talk to her.
Please subscribe to the Tech Leaders podcast.
If you found this episode valuable and thought-provoking, we would really appreciate it if you could quite simply click the subscribe button and possibly even leave a review. This helps us to spread the word and reach a wider audience so that we can make a bigger impact and bring you the best guests possible. Thank you so much for downloading.